And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Aurora Belcea, retired math teacher originally from Romania, whose lifelong meditation practice opened the door to extraordinary experiences with loving ETs and interdimensional beings. Aurora, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jeff. This is a very nice surprise. I love it. This is really great.
Well, we love having you. And let's start with your background and how did all this contact begin for you?
It pretty much all started in 2020. Prior to that, I knew of ETs, but I really wasn't all that interested in them and had no desire to pursue the topic or explore it. But in 2020, after a silent meditation retreat, a 10-day silent meditation retreat, I don't know if it was a spontaneous recall or what exactly happened, but I'm lying in bed next to my husband, just getting ready to go to sleep. And all of a sudden I had my eyes closed and this image, this really clear image popped in my mind's eye, and I am lying there and I've got three little grays over to my left. And I opened my eyes because I was startled. And when I opened my eyes, they were still there. So I was in my bedroom and I could see my bedroom, but on top of the image of my bedroom was this overlay of this other place where I could see these three little grays. They were probably 3 to 4 feet tall, with various instruments. And I wasn't quite sure what was going on. All I knew is that I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And they had this attitude about them that they were going to do whatever it is that they were going to do, and it didn't matter how I felt about it. They were very task-oriented and felt very robotic. It was odd. I had never encountered anything that felt that way. It was very, very strange, and I was absolutely terrified.
You were in a dream, I guess, and you weren't in a dream, but you were awake. Was it the middle of the night?
No, actually.
Was before you went to sleep or in the morning as you were waking up?
It was as I was falling asleep. Okay. I was, just laying down. Usually what I do before I fall asleep is I try to meditate a little, just, focus on my breath and relax. And, I had been doing that for 10 days prior to this happening. So I probably, got to a portion of my subconscious where this was hidden and it sort of popped up. But I hadn't fallen asleep yet. I was just lying there, and this image that was so incredibly clear popped in my mind's eye to the point where, I got startled and I opened my eyes.
And then you opened your eyes and they were physically there with you still?
That's the part that I don't know. It was like I could see them in my room. But on top of that image was this other overlay of my own bedroom. It's like I could see my window, and in the context of my room, they were these three little grays. Whether or not they were there physically, I am actually not sure, to be honest with you. I don't know if this was a live thing or if it was a spontaneous recall. I have never experienced anything like that before, where it appeared like two realities were overlapping.
Is it possible that you were bilocated, like your consciousness?
I've thought about that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I've thought about that. And bilocation has happened to me after, since then I've had some experiences like that. So that it might have been. That is a good way to explain it, because I could feel them. The three little grays they were doing some sort of examination. I'm not sure what they were doing, but they did have instruments. And the one who was over by my left arm, he had this probe or something that he literally stuck through my arm, and it didn't hurt. It was as if, how when you go to the dentist and they numb you, but you can still feel, pressure and so on. That's what it felt like. And there was no mark there the following morning. I mean, I looked to see if there was anything there, but there was nothing there. And I could feel them probing around somehow inside my body. I'm not sure how they did that, but I could literally feel there was something going on inside my body that was, not me, that hadn't been there before. And I assumed that it was some sort of exam, but like I said, I'm not entirely sure what their goal was. Although one thing that did make an impression on me was that I didn't think they were hurting me. There was some other reason why they were there. The reason why I was afraid, why I was so terrified, is because I couldn't move and I couldn't speak. And there was nothing that I could do to, persuade these guys to stop doing what they were doing. Like I said, it didn't hurt or anything, but it was just this idea of having no control over what was happening to me. That's what terrified me. And once, I laid eyes on these three little guys who were doing, like I said, a variety of different things. All of a sudden, I realized that there was this other being standing to my right that was much taller, looked very similar, big black eyes, huge triangular head, with this uniform. They all had like this little turtleneck type thing where the uniform went up on their neck. And I spotted that and I thought that was a little odd. But in any case, this taller one who was to my right was literally in my face. He was leaning over me and he was communicating telepathically that they weren't trying to hurt me, to relax, and that they weren't trying to hurt me. And he was very, very loving. But I got a little freaked out because he had no facial expression. And so there was all this emotion coming from him, trying to calm me down and basically just comfort me. But I couldn't understand why he had no facial expression. I had never experienced anything like that before, ever. The other thing that I remembered about him is that he had his hands, he was holding them like this, and I thought that was a little strange. But what I saw was what seemed to me like a gray. That's actually all I had, all the frame of reference that I had. I didn't know anything about other ETs or what they might have looked like. It was all just what I saw in pop culture, the grays. And this just was another larger version. Now, I remember telling him that I don't care what they're doing to me. I just don't want to know about it. And in that moment, this image sort of started to pull away from me and fading away. And with it went my terror. And at one point, I thought to myself, oh, maybe I can handle this, because it was, interesting. But as soon as it started coming back, when I said that, they started to come back into my, into my reality, or however you want to call it, the terror came back with it. And I said, nope, you know what? I don't want to know anything about this. You guys can do whatever you want to do. I just don't want to know about it. As soon as they were gone, I could sit up finally. And when I sat up, my curtains were drawn on my windows. But I saw these lights just outside my window. Now, we're living in a condo on the second floor, so it's not like ground level. And I thought that's a little odd. If those were emergency vehicles, they're off the ground. They couldn't possibly be that high. And I noticed that there were green lights flashing along with the white and the blue and the red. It literally looked like emergency vehicles out in the street, but they were way too high to really be on the street. And they had green lights. And I'm thinking, emergency vehicles don't have green lights. Turned around to tell my husband, honey, we have some weird lights outside our window. And before I even finished the sentence, they disappeared. And of course, my husband never did get up. And I went to the window to see, what was going on. And the street was empty. If those vehicles had left, I would have heard them pulling away. And so there was nothing in the street. I didn't hear anything. And, to this day, it remains a mystery to me as to what exactly happened. But this event is what started me, got me interested in looking into this whole UFO ET thing. All of a sudden, I was just fascinated by it all. And I wanted to figure out what happened to me. And as I was researching, I started to come across more information, new information. When, for the first time, I learned about Mantis beings, that's when I realized that taller gray who was standing next to me on my right must have been a Mantis being, because he had this way he was holding his arms. And this is another reason why I know it wasn't my imagination. is because I had not seen any drawings or heard about mantis beings before, and yet he had this typical posture of a mantis being. So that was not from my imagination. That had to come from someplace. So that's pretty much what got me started on this journey. It was only in 2020.
Immediately after this happened, were you questioning your sanity and wondering if you were going crazy? And if so, how did you process it?
I didn't think I was crazy. All of a sudden, it felt like a whole other door had opened in my reality, and I was very excited about pursuing it. I never thought for a moment that I was crazy, and I didn't question my sanity. I told my husband about it, and we're very much alike, my husband and I. We're just science fiction and thinking outside of the box, and he validated my experience. And that was very, very helpful. He believed me, and so I didn't think that I was going crazy. Um, the part that was, I guess, agitating for me was that I couldn't find other people who had similar experiences. Sure, I watched interviews and, listened to other people's stories, but as far as in, my bubble reality, there were no other people that I could talk to about this. So that's when I started looking into UFO groups, and I joined a few, and I started to meet people who had, different experiences than I had, but along the same lines, about ET contact and being telepathically, connected and so on. And that put my mind at ease in terms of, okay, there are other people out there that I can talk to about this. I'm not alone. I can get some support. That was for me very comforting. And I really do believe that when we listen to other people's stories, not only do we identify or feel validated, but it also opens up our frame of reference. And we can see our experiences from a different perspective. Like I mentioned about the mantis being, I didn't know what a mantis looked like. And all of a sudden, when I realized that's who that was or what that was, it put that experience in an even more interesting perspective. It wasn't just grays, there was something else there as well.
At this point, do you feel that you're either getting contacted from time to time, or is it possible that you are an ET on a ship having a human experience?
It's interesting that you just said about the ET having a human experience, because for the longest time, I felt that my body, whatever that means, there's another body that is in stasis someplace. Now, I want to say that it's with Bashar's civilization, the Sasani, but I don't know that for a fact. I just feel a lot of pull towards that idea. And while my body is there, I've sort of stepped out of it, and I am here having this experience because it feels like I am part of the boots on the ground, so to speak. There are a lot of ETs and civilizations who are interested in humanity right now, and our evolution and consciousness and so on. And so there are agendas out there, different types of agendas for why ETs are here. But I feel like I am part of something that's very positive, and I am, like I said, the boots on the ground. There need to be others here who can either, inspire or be an example or carry a certain frequency that helps, the collective consciousness and so on. And I have not been able to shake that feeling, but I don't know that I am on a ship. I don't know. I do feel like I said, my body is someplace and it's being watched over by what feels like my daughter, along with other beings there. That's how she refers to me, and that's how I feel about her. But it just could be that from this perspective, maybe she's into the future. If really this is a Sasani civilization, that means that, that physical body is someplace in the future. It's really, really wild to think about these things. And for the longest time, I didn't say anything about it, but I started to hear other people talk in those terms, and I realized, wait a minute, maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe I'm not just, making this up. And the more I accepted that, the more, I don't know, clear I started to be about why I'm here and what I'm doing. And it resonated with me as in, that's the purpose. That's the reason.
Well, that's a great question. Why are you here?
I really think that it's a part of just evolution of humanity, of consciousness. What's happening is, this entire corner of our galaxy is evolving, and just, the universe in general is evolving. But if we just look at this corner of our galaxy, the way that I'm understanding is that in order for things to evolve, the consciousness of this corner of the galaxy evolves in tandem. All the beings who contribute to that collective consciousness are evolving together. And it feels to me like humanity is sort of holding back, holding back the class. Everybody wants to evolve and move up, and we are still in this, rather negative, solid state. And so all of the other ETs or civilizations who are wanting to evolve are helping us to basically level up to the next level so that we can all evolve together. So it's not so much that, they have compassion for humanity, which they do. It's more of a, we're in this together and you guys need to catch up kind of a thing. That's the sense that I get. Whether or not that's actually true, I don't know. This is just my opinion and what resonates with me. Also, I believe that these civilizations who are interested in us are literally family. And I'm speaking in terms of consciousness and DNA. And that's another reason why they can't really move on without us, is because we are very connected with them in that sense. We share a consciousness, we share DNA, and we all resonate, we share a certain frequency, and they cannot move up without us, so to speak.
Do you think that this experience was due to your meditation practice? And if so, what is it about meditation that opened you up?
It's interesting that you asked that, because in 2020, during that meditation course that I just mentioned, the retreat I mentioned before I had that experience, I had an ontological shock during that meditation. I saw the matrix, if you want to use that word, this whole idea of life after life after life of really not accomplishing anything. It's pretty much the same themes over and over and over again, and not really moving out of that. And so I had this perspective on my existence as a human, and how I didn't recognize that I am basically just stuck in this loop of reincarnation that I'm really not evolving out of. And that really gave me a very, very different perspective on reality and what I was doing here. So that helped. I think meditation helped to settle my mind enough to where some of the things that I had in my subconscious or my higher mind, however you want to look at it, were able to bubble up to the surface. The static got more quiet. The mind got a little more quiet. There's a lot of noise in this reality that really interferes with our ability to fully hear ourselves, our higher minds, and so on. There's a lot of distractions, obviously, but there's also background noise. There's a lot of static that's in the ether, so to speak. And meditation helps me to sort of bypass that. And it sharpens and focuses my mind so that I can perceive the more subtle aspects of my consciousness. And when I do that, they basically come to the surface of my conscious mind, and I start to integrate them. But meditation, that's what works for me. Jogging works for other people, or anything that you can do that quiets the mind and, basically relaxes us to the point where we are not looking to do anything in particular as far as searching for wisdom in ourselves, and just allow things to rise to the surface, because they do rise naturally, as long as we stop, like I said, paying attention to the noise.
Now, in
And that's what meditation does for me. Go ahead.
back in 2014, long before this, didn't you have a telepathic experience?
Yeah. Yeah. This was long, long before I became interested in ETs. And at the time, I didn't even consider it as a contact. I thought it was maybe an angel because it happened right after a car accident that left me pretty much disabled. I couldn't work anymore. It just started this, it was the first domino in a series of health problems that never really got resolved from that point on. And at the time, right after my accident, I was in a really bad place, I could even say. Couldn't work anymore. I couldn't do the things that I used to do. And I was a very active person. I mean, I was a teacher. I enjoyed my job. And suddenly I was too tired and too much pain to do really anything. And I remember sitting on the couch one day. My kids were at school. My husband had gone to work, so I was by myself, and I was just going to zone out on Netflix and forget about my troubles. But there was this nudging for me to go and sit in my little meditation room, which is basically just a closet under the stairs. I had stopped meditating by that point. But so this was interesting. It kept persisting. It kept persisting. And so I finally got up and I went and I sat down on my meditation cushion and I closed my eyes. And as soon as I did that, the room filled with the presence of this being who was so loving. And the experience was so intense, I literally was afraid to open my eyes because I would have freaked out if I had seen somebody there. But it felt like there was somebody right there with me. And what I experienced was this overwhelming wave of compassionate love that literally just went through my body, top to bottom, inside and out. It was really intense. It brought me to tears. And then I had the sense that he was saying to me that I wasn't being punished. Like this was not a punishment, were the exact words that I heard. And I thought that was very interesting that he said that a couple of times because that's where I was going with it. Everything got taken away from me. I'm being punished. Whatever I did, I deserve to suffer, that sort of thing. Like I said, I was in a pretty bad place. And after that, he said, and I still don't understand what he meant by that. And it wasn't really words. It was more of an intention. He implied that a big guy or somebody who is in charge, someone of authority, and these are the words that I heard, is pleased with my progress. I have no idea what that meant. And at the time, I thought he was, referring to God or something of that nature. And I thought, wow, why would that be so important for me to know? And I really didn't know what to make of it. And he was only there, for 5 minutes, not very long. And when he was done, again, this whole shower of compassionate love, just went right through me. And I was sad he left because it felt really good for a change to feel, comforted. And I was crying. I remember I went straight to the phone and I called my husband and I told him what happened. And again, he validated my experience, but, he didn't know. He also was coming from a place of, religious understanding, was an angel and you were there, somebody came to basically tell you that everything was okay. Now, fast forward about a decade, and I run into somebody at a UFO meeting. And it turns out that the being who contacted me in 2014 was part of a group of beings that this gentleman had known since he was a child. And you've had him on your show. His name is Kevin Briggs.
Okay.
And he often talks about the Council of Eight. Well, this was somebody from the Council of Eight. I hadn't known about the Council of Eight until I met Kevin. And when I told him about my experience, he told me that sounds a lot like Ort, which is one of the beings on the Council of Eight. And from that point on, I started to become aware of the other beings in the Council of Eight. They started contacting me telepathically. At first, I thought I was dreaming or making it up, but I kept going back to Kevin and telling him, here's what's happening. And he said, yeah, it is really happening. You're not making it up. About, I don't know, a month or two ago, I had this experience where I actually saw them. It was an out-of-body experience that I did not initiate. It just sort of happened spontaneously, again, while I was meditating. And I literally saw them and actually experienced them. And that's the first time I really realized that they are real. It was really intense. It was a really, really intense experience. And now I don't question them anymore. Even after I talked to Kevin and he kept reassuring me, I still kept going back to, I don't know about this. Is it really real? Am I just making it up? But after this experience that I just mentioned that I had a couple of months ago, it's like, no, they really are real. They really have been around. They really have been contacting me. And yeah, that was pretty mind-blowing.
Have they given you any personal messages or any message for humanity?
Yes, actually, one of the things that I started doing shortly after I went to a C5 at my friend's house is I went from drawing stick figures to drawing portraits of ETs. Like, I have no idea how all of a sudden I had the skill. And Ort was the one who was pretty much guiding me and telling me, you got to put these things on social media. You got to share these portraits with people, because the way he explained it is the beings in the portraits I was drawing used those drawings to basically project their energy into our space, and the people who resonated with them would respond, would somehow, recognize that, hey, I have a star family out there, and that would be facilitating their contact with their star families. And so Ort encouraged me to do that. And that's what he told me that I should be doing to help people recognize that their star families are here. The other message that he had for me was about how open contact was really what the process was for open contact. And what he told me was that it wasn't necessarily going to be ships landing on the White House lawn. It would start with ETs contacting their family, basically their human family, individuals, one-on-one, and beginning to have sort of a telepathic contact or through consciousness in order for us to feel, I guess, more comfortable, to become familiar with them. Because by the time they actually do present themselves physically, when that happens, we will respond to them instead of reacting with fear, with recognition. It's like, oh, I know you. Sort of like you run into a high school buddy in the grocery store that you haven't seen for 20 years. It's like, whoa, I remember you. So that's how Ort explained it to me, that people are being contacted, individuals are being contacted by their star families to start to develop this familiarity, this relationship, to help us remember where, who we are connected with. So that was part of his message. The other part of the message was that they are not going to be interacting with humanity unless we are, I guess, sufficiently self-empowered to be, sovereign as a human being. In other words, nobody's going to come and save us. And if we look to our star families for help me, this is a terrible place, can you take me away from here? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. We signed up to be here. And so whether or not we've changed our minds since then, it doesn't change the fact that we are here. And our job is basically to embody the human body physically and become a sovereign human being, as opposed to feeling powerless in front of, the government's manipulating us, the media's manipulating us, and so on. I hear so many stories about how, everything is manipulating us and everybody's lying to us and so on. And that's a place of victimhood. And individually, we need to come out of that victimhood idea and just become, like I said, sovereign within ourselves as human beings, not as I am ET an ET who's here to have a human experience, but to literally accept and embody the human experience.
Do you feel that they're going to be disclosing themselves and be here with us on planet anytime soon?
They already are. They are. They already are. And most of us, yeah, I'm going to actually use that word. Most of us already know that on some level. Most of us know it subconsciously. And what happens is, like I said, there's this static. There is this, gosh, how do I phrase this? I have heard other people refer to it. Some of your guests, I've heard them refer to it as like an installation that's been here for a really, really long time. And, now it's sort of falling apart. But basically what it is there's this white noise that has to do with blocking out certain signals. Like, how sometimes people will fall asleep listening, to a fan. It's white noise in the room and it sort of blocks out the other noises so you're able to fall asleep. It's the same kind of idea, but it actually blocks signals that our brain is actually able to perceive. This is why it's so difficult to communicate telepathically here. Now, I've heard people, and yeah, I think there was the astronauts who said that they could communicate telepathically when they were away from Earth. I think it was one of the programs that had to do with going to the moon for some reason. I forget the exact details of it. But they were able to communicate telepathically so much easier outside of the Earth atmosphere or outside of whatever, the range of this thing is. But it's literally white noise and it feels artificial. I've come across it during meditation. And it's like, this doesn't feel like me. It doesn't feel organic. It feels literally like this buzzing in the background, this constant buzzing in the background that's been there forever. And we don't even realize it's there anymore. And that's what's impeding us from really being in touch with our true selves and be able to communicate with others telepathically. It's basically muffles out our psychic abilities. That's the best way that I can describe it. It's this buzzing that, when the fan is going in the background, I have a hard time hearing people talking to me because it muffles out those sounds. It's the same kind of an idea.
Do you think the Earth is set up this way because some nefarious ET group is trying to keep us down, or so we can have this human experience and not realize who we truly are?
In my opinion, the answer is yes to both of those questions. This place, Earth, is a very unique environment in that, we come here and we have no memories of our soul, of our other previous experiences. So basically, we can come here and have an experience, from a blank slate and recognize or find out who we really are without having any sort of awareness of our link to source. In other words, if I really want to test my soul, let's say, what am I really made of? Am I really this, is my soul influenced by my connection with source or by the support of everybody else around me? Or am I truly a soul who is going to blossom into a beautiful thing regardless of my environment? That's how you know when you've changed. It doesn't matter what's in the environment, is how do you respond to that environment? So I think this is one of those places where you can actually do that because, again, we feel cut off from everything. We are cut off from each other. We can't communicate telepathically. It's all very linear, very verbal. Everything appears to be outside of ourselves. So in this environment, how does my soul develop? What is truly my nature? And as we grow and we recognize, wow, I am more about serving, service to others as opposed to service to self. And I'm not being influenced by anyone. This is just my own intrinsic intention that I've come with in this life. I think it really helps to define at the soul level. It really helps us to define who we actually are. There's nobody else to look at, to mirror us back. It's like I'm here by myself. Basically, what am I really made of? And with difficulties that we encounter in a human life, am I still going to be a loving person? Am I going to rise above all of those things? and still be somebody who loves and cares in spite of the pain. That's just how I see it. It could be that that's just my life theme. I don't really know, but that's how I see it. And in order for that to happen, the so-called, nefarious beings are here setting up the environment, basically, setting up this playground in a certain way so that we can have a certain experience. Now, they're not doing it for our benefit. Those guys are more service to self, so they're doing what they're doing because that's what they were built to do. That's their job. You can't have, light without darkness. And so, it's all everything is connected. From one perspective, it can appear that we are victims of whatever malevolent ET species or the government and so on. But on the other hand, we can look at it from the perspective of, I picked this place because it is the way it is so that I could learn more about myself. And it all depends on how we look at it.
If they are here, are they other ET beings that are appearing human to us because of this white noise? Or are they here and they're invisible because they're in another frequency?
I think it's both. I really do. I think it's both. I think this white noise is really preventing us from seeing a lot of the truths around us, in terms of how, we're being manipulated by a variety of things. This white noise is what I believe keeps somebody on the couch zoning out in front of the TV with a can of beer in their hand. It has no motivation to do anything. It's just sort of this really flat affect. So yes, I do believe that these ETs are here and we don't see them. However, I think that, how do I put this? It's difficult for them to really come here and stay here in physical form because this environment is so dense. And if they are beings with a higher frequency, it takes a lot of energy to stay here in the physical. Imagine, if you have a ping pong ball and you try to keep it submerged underwater, you let it go, it pops right back up. It's kind of like this, that's kind of how I see it. So those who are on the surface are not here long term. I don't think they can be here for too long because it requires so much energy to stay here in this form. That's kind of how I see it. Most of the contact that happens really happens telepathically. And I do believe that they can influence other people to communicate their messages through to us. I'm not talking about taking over somebody's mind. Whoever, that individual is, we have these contracts, I believe, with ETs and a number of other beings where we agree to sort of be a mouthpiece, so to speak. If they want to transmit something through us, we agree that we're going to be okay with that, even though we may not be aware of it at a conscious level. I think that's what a lot of channelers are, is they agree to, communicate this information from someplace else. But it's not necessarily, that official. I'm a channeler, so therefore I'm, sharing this information. I really do believe that ETs and our guides are communicating through us all the time. So yes, there is a physical presence, but I think most of their presence really happens through our consciousness.
You had another encounter with a mantis being that also included a download that it involved you remembering your psychic abilities, which now I think you're able to put those to use. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. This again happened in the context of meditation. I was at the meditation center just for the weekend, and during one of the meditation sessions, I felt like somebody had opened my mind and downloaded the contents of their computer into my head. It was a massive download of information, and it felt like symbols. It was symbolic. There were symbols that I tried to draw them afterwards, and I really couldn't. They looked like Japanese letters, sort of squarish, and they had sort of like a hieroglyphical look to them. But they were symbols. And I remember when I came home from that weekend, all of a sudden I started to feel like there are things that I am remembering that I can do that I never thought about before. And one of them was telekinesis. And so what I started doing is I watched some videos on YouTube about other people who practice it. And there are people out there who have, telekinesis skills that are much more powerful than I have, which is really not saying much. What I'm doing is just spinning a little piece of aluminum foil on the tip of a pin. But I watched those videos, and with that came again this, like, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. It's just a matter of remembering how to do it in this body. It was, as if, let's say I was in an accident, I lost my leg. So now I have a prosthetic leg and I'm having to learn how to walk all over again. I knew how to walk, but now I'm learning how to walk again using this prosthetic leg. It was that same kind of feeling. Like, I already know how to do this. It's just a matter of learning how to do it in this form, in this body. And so I started practicing based on what I saw on YouTube. And when the thing spun for the first time, it blew my mind. But I was still very skeptical. I figured, oh, you know what? Maybe it's the wind in the room. Maybe it's a breeze. Maybe it's, even though I wore a mask and I try to, control the air conditioning and all of that, I figured, no, it's not good enough until I can spin it when it's covered. Like, I put a glass jar over it. And that took a while to get it to move, but I did. And that was like, wow, magic is real. It was so mind-blowing. It really, really changed my entire understanding of reality. I realized how everything is connected, even me and that little piece of aluminum. Everything is connected, and how we can affect one another through intention. And, energy and intention is what it takes. And that white noise that I was mentioning earlier, that's the part that interferes with our clear intention. It's really difficult to focus. It keeps coming in. This interference keeps coming in. And that's what I've noticed as far as, my experience with moving this thing around, spinning this. And then after that, I just started to feel like I was receiving information from someplace. I knew things that I didn't know before. I had no idea how I knew them. Sometimes I would only know things for a short period of time, and then I wouldn't anymore. And I would wonder what happened to that. I used to know this. So I think that was part of the, like you said, the psychic abilities. I think that sort of got awakened. And as time went on, more and more, they became increasingly more obvious. I still can't control, other than, like I said, spinning that little piece of aluminum foil on top of a pin. I can't go astral traveling because I want to. I don't know how to do that. It does happen spontaneously, and I end up in some pretty interesting places every now and again. But I don't have control over it. And the way I look at it is, I'm just going to let it happen when it happens. I'm going to be where I need to be when I need to be there, and find out whatever it is that I need to find out. And yeah, that's pretty much how it's been for me.
Are you still in contact with the Mantis being or the Council of Eight? And if so, what was your most recent encounter?
Yes, I'm still in contact with them. Out of all the different types of ETs out there, I would say that the Mantis beings are the ones that make their appearance in my life most frequently. The last experience, I mean, they visit during meditation. I can feel them. They're coming in, and they're just a very supportive, or they have a download that I'm getting, but it's nothing like what happened at the meditation center. The last experience that I had with a Mantis being was rather unusual compared to the others. Most of the time when a Mantis being comes to see me or, interact with me, it's more of a teaching experience, where this time it wasn't that. I was meditating, and I somehow ended up on a ship with insectoids. And I have no idea how that happened, but there I was. And I was in my meditation room. I mean, I knew my body was still here, but my mind was totally someplace else. So I was awake through this. And it was incredibly vivid and clear. Um, I popped into this place that felt like a ship. It actually looked like a World War II submarine, an old submarine. It had, this pukey military grayish yellow paint to it. It really, that's what it felt like. It felt like an old World War II submarine. And the space where I was, I could see these little insectoids. They were maybe 3 feet tall. They had their back to me and they were facing these panels. They looked like, they didn't look like advanced technology. It looked very analog to me, with gauges and dials, but that might have been just because that was my frame of reference. But in any case, once they realized that I was there, they all turned around and looked at me like, what is this? They maybe never seen a human before, I don't know. And then they swarmed me. And at the time, I'm thinking to myself, why am I not afraid? Why do I feel so peaceful? And I felt this wave of compassion as if I was being swarmed by a group of kindergartners. That's what they felt like. Like, oh, I don't know if you've been around kindergartners who are excited to see their teacher, with their sticky hands, they want to hug you, they want to touch you, they tell you how much they love you and so on. Well, these guys weren't communicating love, but they were trying to figure out if I was a threat. But that's exactly what it felt like. They were all just around me and with the little antennas. They're sticky, by the way. And then once they realized that I wasn't a threat, all of them turned around at the same time and then went back to whatever it was that they were doing. And that's when I realized, wow, they must have a hive mind. Well, within a few moments after that, the door opened. And I remember this. It was a submarine door because it was round. You know how they have it so they separate the compartments, I guess, so that water doesn't fill the whole thing all at once. In any case, it had a wheel on the door that was this yellow paint. And I remember seeing where the paint had worn off. It was like metal, you could see the metal underneath the paint. And when the wheel turned and the door opened, this huge mantis came in. I mean, he had to hunch over to get through the door, but his posture was, hunched over, but he had to hunch over even more, and he had to step over the threshold where, the door was just, in the center, but there was like this little elevated part that you had to step over. And I remember thinking to myself that I'm glad he didn't trip because he didn't seem like the kind of guy who would find that funny. And he heard me. And he gave me this look, very serious, like, what the heck are you thinking about? He was not amused, let's put it that way. And as he was stepping in, I got the sense from the other insectoids who were there that, this is the general. That's how they were referring to him. And he seemed, he carried a lot of authority. He seemed to be in charge. He seemed, to be like basically the captain, I guess. I don't know, but they referred to him as the general. And he didn't introduce himself. He was very surprised to see me there. Said something, this was all telepathic, said something along the lines of, you're a human, you shouldn't be able to do this. What are you doing here? And he did not wait for me to answer. I don't think he was expecting me to answer. He was just going to figure it out for himself just by going inside my head, which is exactly what he did. And I couldn't do anything about it. I literally felt like my mind was a file cabinet, and he opened it and he was going through the files looking for stuff. And I could see what he was pulling out. And it surprised me because it was only memories and images of people being nice to each other, instances when I had been compassionate or kind. And it surprised me because I thought, wow, I have a lot of violence in my mind, things that I've seen, that, places that I've been where I've experienced violence, or just, my own thoughts, anger, and so on. And he did not pull any of those out. And it was interesting because he would like go forwards and backwards. It was almost as if I was watching my thoughts on a screen in my mind. And he was going through them very, very quickly. He would slow down every now and again and pay closer attention to something. I don't know why, but he did that back and forth. It was it was really interesting. And he didn't ask for permission. He didn't basically care. He just opened my mind and went through it. Like I said, like it was a file cabinet. And I'm standing there thinking, should I be afraid? No, I'm not going to be afraid. There's nothing I can do. And I just basically relaxed into it. And the sense of, compassion and loving kindness started welling up, and I just went along with it. Um, he was going through my mind, and for some reason, I had the sense that he had a very different understanding of humanity. And I don't know why I said this to him, but I said, this is who you would be destroying. And I'm not sure why I said that. Eventually, somehow it came to me that this was a group of, I guess, mercenaries who were basically waiting for the signal to, I guess, come to Earth and stir up trouble. I don't know why the word destroy was in my mind, but that's how it came out. And he didn't say anything about that, but he was very surprised at what he found as far as actually finding positive things. Later on, I found out he came back. It was again during another meditation session. He came back and he was really, really angry, but he wasn't angry with me. Apparently, whoever had hired them to do whatever job they were supposed to do had lied to them and told him that basically humans were barbaric, that the universe would be better off without us, is the information that he had. And so that's why he was so surprised. Yeah, he was very, very, very angry that he had been lied to. And then he left. I'm not sure why he came back to tell me that, but he did. This was like several weeks later. And that was pretty much the end of that experience. After he was done going through my mind, I just sort of popped back into my meditation room. Now, what was interesting about that experience is that I felt like I had exit points where I could have left that place if I wanted to, and I chose to stay. Again, I have no idea how that happened. It like happened spontaneously. I don't know why I ended up there. The fact that it felt like a submarine really confused me. And I thought maybe it was just my frame of reference because, it was something that I could relate to in terms of what I know from Earth. But I spoke to somebody who said that other people have mentioned this whole idea of being on a submarine. And that really validated my experience. I was like, wow, that's, always nice to hear that somebody else has a similar experience, because that basically reinforced that whatever happened, was indeed real. And it wasn't just my imagination. I always question that, am I just making this up? But when I get validation like that, it's like, no, that was really real. That was really real. Whatever that was, it was real.
Well, maybe you were in a underwater UFO.
It could have been. Yes, it could have been. The comment that he made about when I told him this is who you would be destroying, his reply was, "Why do you care? This is not your timeline anyway." And it was after that I left. I didn't get a sense that we were in space, to address your comment. It could have been a UFO underwater. They were hiding. I can tell you that much. They were hiding. And I thought the idea of hiding inside a submarine, that kind of makes sense because, it's pretty innocuous. However, I would imagine that hiding in a UFO in a ship would be better because it would be, not as easy to detect. So, like I said, I'm not sure exactly what I was on and where exactly it was, but I got the sense that they were hiding and they were on Earth and it was underwater.
Well, at some point in your life, you became an artist.
Yeah.
Is your background one of your works of art?
Oh, yes, it is actually. That's supposed to be, you can see the sun in the center. That's supposed to be our solar system.
It's cool.
That was one of the first few things that I drew. But I wasn't I mean, I was a math teacher and I drew stick figures on the board to help my students understand word problems. I mean, that was about the extent of my artistic abilities. But I went to a CE5 at a friend's house, and we had sightings. It was a lot of fun, but it wasn't anything spectacular. I didn't feel like I got any downloads or anything like that. It was just a lot of fun. And when I came back from that CE5, from that point on, I really started to have this urge to draw portraits of ETs, faces of ETs. And I didn't think I had the skill. I didn't have the skill. But when I started drawing them, I was amazed at what was coming out on paper. And I really didn't understand how that happened. I just knew that I was having so much fun. It got to the point where I would have rather been, drawing than eating or sleeping or doing laundry or any of those things. It was just absolutely consuming how much fun it was. And so I started drawing portraits of ETs, not really knowing why. The part that really surprised me is that I had made some new friends at the C5, and when I came home, I started drawing this portrait of a mantis. I was actually trying to draw the mantis who I had seen during my first experience, and that's not what came out. I did draw a mantis, but as I'm drawing this being, I'm getting messages, not for me, but for somebody I had met at the C5 a week prior. I'd never seen this person before. We shared phone numbers just because that's what we do. When you join a C5, we try to, keep in contact with one another. And so I'm getting these messages for this person that I know nothing about. And I have this urge to share these messages with this person. So I texted him and I told him what was going on. And I said, you know what? I understand if you never want to talk to me again. If you block me, I probably sound completely nuts, but here's what's happening. And I told him the messages that I was getting for him. And he surprised me. He resonated with everything I was saying. And so I kept, sending him these messages as I was getting this information. And he was very validating and very encouraging. And apparently there were things that I told him that there was no way I could have known.
What kind of messages?
Messages about his purpose, let's say. This mantis that I was connecting with was a plant medicine type being. And he was trying to communicate to my friend that is a path where that would be satisfying for him to pursue. It wasn't like this is what he's supposed to do kind of a message. It was just, if you this is a direction that is a good direction for you to go into. And I didn't know that my friend had already started to basically take courses and learn more about plant medicine. And he was in a place where he wasn't quite sure if he was wasting his time or if that's what he was really supposed to go into. So he had some doubts about what he was doing. And this message that came through from this mantis really resonated with him and validated what he was already, sort of inclined to do. And yeah, I had no idea that that's what he was exploring. So he was very surprised to hear that. A few months later, he texted me again and said that he had his Akashic records read. He went to had a session with somebody who read his Akashic records and confirmed all the information that I had told him that came from this being. And I thought that was really neat that he called me or texted me to tell me that I was spot on. That definitely helped with my self-confidence. And he was the first individual that happened with.
Did you ever show him a picture of that being?
Oh, yeah.
Did he
Yeah.
resonate with it at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I sent it to him. He loved it. It was just exactly what it resonated with him not because that being looked like something that he had seen, but because everything about that drawing, whatever it was about that drawing, it really confirmed in a way that went beyond words that he was headed in the right direction, that that was what he was supposed to be doing. And I have these drawings. If you want to see it, I can probably share it with you. I don't know if I can share my screen. This was my first attempt to draw the being who I mentioned earlier during that spontaneous recall or whatever it was. My first experience, who was leaning over me. He was on the right side. He was leaning over me and he was communicating telepathically, you know, trying to comfort me and calm me down. And this is what I saw. He had a huge triangular head with these humongous eyes. And you can see where his hands, he was holding his hands in this very strange position. I had no idea why he was doing that. It was a little odd. But I tried to draw him, and this is what came out first. I wasn't happy with it. I couldn't get his head to look right. So I tried to draw him again. And let me show you how that came out. This is my second attempt to draw him. And again, this one felt a little better, but it was still not exactly how he felt. This one felt too scary. I drew him. This was a while later after that experience, after I had learned a little more about mantis beings and what they looked like and so on. And so this is what I came up with at that point. But like I said, this looked a little too scary. So I kept trying to pinpoint, you know, I wanted to get the feel for him. That's what I was actually after. I wanted to get the feeling that I had about him. And so I kept trying to redraw him. So he looked like this, a lot friendlier, and there's some color to him now. Purple and dark red were the colors that seemed to fit. And, you know, this green background, these were the colors that evoked in me the emotions that I felt when I thought about him. Still, it wasn't right. I was getting closer, but it wasn't right. You can see I drew this one in 2022, so that was 3 years ago, and I had that experience in 2020. So I had been trying to, you know, find a way to express myself, you know, and I was getting close, but it wasn't quite it. This drawing was before I went to that C5, where suddenly my artistic abilities just blossomed. And so, again, I wasn't satisfied with it, and I tried one last time. And this time it was a little bit closer to what I wanted to say. So this is closer to what he looked like and what he felt like to me. I have I colored this one a little later, and I can show you that as well. Now you can see the date here on this drawing is 2024. So this is, again, 2 years after that. I had been exploring this whole idea about mantis beings. And this is the mantis that I saw in my mind's eye when I was just watering my plants on my balcony, and all of a sudden this being popped in my head, and the sense of overwhelming love and compassion just washed over me. I know that it wasn't my imagination, because there is no way that I would have associated that image with the feeling of compassion. You know, this is a huge insect. And when I saw him in my mind's eye, his mandibles were open. It almost looked like he was going to eat me, but later I found out that he was actually smiling at me. So instead of being absolutely terrified, I felt this feeling of love and compassion. He stayed with me for a good 30 minutes, and I had the most consciousness expanding experience that I have ever had, where I started to recognize that I was the one who was creating my reality. I could see myself in everything around me, the plants, the trees, the chair. It was all my own creation. Now, right now, I don't have that understanding as I'm speaking about this, but at the time that it was happening, it was really profound. I recognized it in my bones that that's what I'm doing, how I'm creating my own reality. And I remember after a while, I went in to talk to my husband, and I told him, I don't know what's happening to me. It's like I'm becoming enlightened or something. And he looked at me a little bit weird. It's like, what are you talking about? So I started telling him about what was happening. And as I started talking, it faded away because I started to think about it, and I came out of that state. But let me show you what the color copy looks like. Okay, so I colored him, and this is what he looked like, literally, in my mind's eye, as close as I could possibly get it. Now, the background is more about how he feels to me, because I'm still in contact with this being. He has sort of this, I don't know, I want to call it like a buzzing. There's a buzzing about him that feels very insect-like, but not quite. It's more than that. It's more than that. So I try to communicate that as much as I could, so that when somebody looks at this drawing, it's not just that's what he looked like as far as his appearance, but I try to communicate what he feels like to me.
There's something about his eyes that just kind of draws you into him.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I have no idea how I did that. But his gaze is very intense. That's the way that I felt him look at me is he was seeing past my physical form. He was looking into my soul and seeing me as I actually am, not as a physical projection of that, as if he was seeing my consciousness, not this body, which is a projection of my consciousness. It was a very, I want to say, intimate connection. And I've experienced that with him on a number of occasions. Yeah, he's probably the one that I feel most closely connected to as far as, consciousness or emotion-wise. I feel connected with the others in terms of loving kindness, and I can feel their compassion. But he has a special place in my heart because of that. He just connects, we connect on a much, much deeper level. Much deeper level. And let me tell you, 5 years ago, if somebody would have told me that I would have a close relationship with somebody who looked like that, I would have told them they were nuts. I never would have imagined.
Have you ever tried meditating with this picture? Just kind of like looking and staring at the picture and letting your mind go blank.
Yeah, I have. And he comes to life. Literally, he comes to life. This is what I meant when I said that these portraits, the whole idea is for these beings who are in these portraits to project their energy, their presence into our space. And I have other portraits that I can share with you where the gaze, the eyes, the way they look at you or me or whoever's looking at them, it has that same kind of effect where they draw you in. It connects somehow on a level that goes beyond words. And that was the whole idea, what Ort told me about. This is how people can connect with, members of their star family and start to remember who they are. Because once I started posting these drawings on social media, I was really afraid at first because I didn't know what kind of comments I was going to get. And this was my art, I didn't want to hear or see nasty comments, and I was really afraid of that. But I was amazed at the comments that were pouring in, not only about, wow, this is beautiful artwork, which I don't know whether or not it is, it's all in the eye of the beholder, but people started to tell me that the beings I was posting the portraits of looked familiar to them. The best part about it was people who made comments on a specific portrait and then started connecting with each other. They started sharing experiences on that post, comments that we're making with each other. They were no longer communicating with me. They got together and they recognized that they had something that they share, that particular being looked familiar to them.
Where can people go so they can look at all these portraits? Like on Facebook or a website?
Yeah, on Facebook, if they send me a message, I'll send them a friend request because I was getting a lot of strange friend requests. I decided I was going to change my privacy settings. I also have a Google Drive that I can send you the link to, and they can see them on my Google Drive. Everything is free to download and share. I mean, these drawings are meant to be shared. They're meant to, yeah, just be shared and talked about. So even when I was drawing portraits for people who had asked me to draw things for them, I never charged any money because that's not what this is about. This was just about sharing things with everyone. So on Facebook and on my Google Drive, they're free to download and share.
If
So
people,
I can send you that.
all right, if people want to ask you questions, are you open to that? And should they also contact you on Facebook?
Yeah, that's probably the best way. If you just put in my name, Aurora Belcea, I'm the only one who's going to pop up. And yeah, I mean, I'll do my best to answer them, um, and point them in the right direction. I don't do portraits anymore because I got really overwhelmed. So many people started asking, and I got to this place where it felt like there was a line of people waiting on one side and a crowd of being, an ever increasing crowd of beings who wanted to connect with the people who were waiting in line. And I just started to feel pressured, and it wasn't fun anymore. It was a little bit too much. I want to get back to doing that. I am still doing that. It's just not to the same extent. Because again, that's part of my role. I don't want to say what I'm supposed to do, but I know that's something that is important for me to keep doing. I just have to find a balance of how to do that without feeling overwhelmed.
Aurora, before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
The most common message, I guess, a message that I get most often from these beings that come through for other people who want to get in touch with them is that we're not alone, and they are here. And just because we don't perceive their presence at a conscious level, that doesn't mean that they're not here. It doesn't mean that they don't hear us. It's just a matter of, like I said, quieting the mind and putting ourselves in a space where we are open and calm and accepting the possibility that what we are getting is not just our imagination. There are a lot of things that we have been conditioned to dismiss as imagination or invalid that are actually messages from our star families. And that is, I think, important to remember, that they are here, they do love us, and we're not alone.
Aurora, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.